Hey, yo, what's good, everyone? Twisted here with the Opener Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about Archangel Asariel. This being another instance of me going ahead and donning a spotlight on another angelic entity and doing angelic PR, or public relations, I guess you can say. Not necessarily in the same manner as the first wave of them were done, but using a similar source, what have you, for some information, and we'll get into that as we progress along, for those who are more so familiar with previous iterations of this. But yes, so, Asariel, who are they? Now, I am going to go ahead and dial it back to a previous instance of going ahead and giving a spotlight onto a particular archangel, and that being Amnitio, which the subtitle for that was Piscean Swiss Army Knife. The reason why I do so is because Asariel happens to also be related to the sign of Pisces, but other things as well, and all of that. And they happen to have a bit of a dynamic, you can say, but I will get a little bit further into that as we go on as well. But generally speaking, the general info of Asariel, right? So, their name in Hebrew translates into God is my aid. And said name also has been interpreted as whom God has bound, particularly by oath. And in regards to what they govern over, right? They're considered by many to be the patron angel of waters. Now, granted, there are many different angels and archangels associated with the element of water, but I guess you can kind of think of it as like the ocean, right? In that sort of sense. At least that's how I personally interpret Asariel and their sort of water and governance, what have you. And the reason why, I think, once you hear the particular planetary association, you'll kind of understand at least how it relates, towards me, what have you. But yes, so, they're heavily associated with the planet Neptune and the zodiacal sign of Pisces, but being that they are associated with the sign of Pisces, they also tend to dip a bit into the Jupiterian traits of that zodiacal sign, in terms of the sort of affinities that they have and all that sort of thing, right? So, in terms of where Sariel happens to belong to, where they come from in their initial sort of mentioning, right? This is according to Rosemary Geely or Giles, and I always put that caveat of whichever pronunciation because I do not know. I've never heard her name spoken, so I could be butchering it either way. But in any case, it comes from the Encyclopedia of Angels, 2nd edition. And Asariel is originally mentioned as one of the 28 angels of the mansions of the moon. But the source material, the original source material prior to said encyclopedia, and all the other sort of mentions of them afterwards, happen to, for the mansions of the moon grouping, that is, of different angelic entities, it comes from the Arabic and Islamic grimoire, which is called the Picatrix. And for those who are unfamiliar with it, it is a grimoire that deals quite a bit with astrological and planetary magic of, various types, particularly that of crafting talismans for specific purposes, what have you, and different times of, where the moon is placed within the 360 degrees of the nighttime sky, what have you. But yes, so in going ahead and getting that general sort of, like, I'm not gonna lie, basic bitch info that anyone could look up, happens to be, like I stated, my interpretation of the whole patron angel of waters is more so like oceanic in a sense, because of the association with Neptune and all of that. To the planet Neptune, and then there are those who associate Asariel to the Greco-Roman deity Neptune, Poseidon, what have you, in the sense of trying to, have some sort of syncretism with, different pantheons of entities and deities, what have you. But in terms of less of a textbook, informational sort of interpretation or background, right? I want to go ahead and share my co-host Devi's thoughts on Asariel in regards to, different things that, she has interpreted, and her being quite a bit of a empath and a psychic, and more so having visuals come to her more so easily and readily in relation to Asariel and just her overall state of being. So, I had mentioned Amnitio prior, and that being, a Piscean angelic entity that I went ahead and gave some props and a shout out to around this time last year in our weekly Wednesday series of episodes, what have you. And pretty much, in making a comparison or a parallel or interrelation between the two, this is Devi's interpretation of Asariel in contrast to Amnitio. So while Amnitio is a younger, feminine, playful sort of angelic entity, Asariel is more along the lines of older, masculine, and wise in their demeanor. So in that sort of sense, both of them have their different sort of approaches and or how that you can come across, their personas can come across. And of course this is based on her interpretation and by my own sort of manner of confirmation as well. But, anybody can go ahead and have their own experiences and engage with these entities and possibly get a different result. But we're sharing with you guys what it is that we have in fact come across for ourselves. But yes, she further elaborated on her interpretation that he is like a steel rod wrapped in cotton. And I'm not going to lie, when that symbolic imagery was gone ahead and presented to me, the latter part I needed a little bit extra elaboration on. So, in order to put it more calmly and simply, firm yet adaptable. In consulting Asariel, with assistance from Devi, about the proper hue of colors to use to better interact with and understand them, right? The one particular color that was told was a variation of green. That was like a emeraldish green, you can say. But more so, what I wanted to go ahead and share was in that sort of like session of discovery, what was gone ahead and told to me, by way of Devinium, is that Asariel is saying that he's more light in color versus dark. Think along the lines of a wave pool holding a wave pool holding an entire ecosystem. Everything is in the light instead of the deep murky waters. So yes, in that sort of sense, right? It's pretty much like, alright, there's many different entities that deal with the water, right? And the emotional state of things and, all of that, and that being, under wraps and it being potentially deep, and you got to go ahead and dive in, what have you. Well, Asariel is very good at taking those things that have sunk to the bottom or sunk down low, what have you, and being able to bring it up to the surface. I guess you can say, I'm trying to think of the particular wording, like, if there is, some sort of flotation device that is activated if something is sinking and brings it up to the top, what have you. That's the best I can think at the top of my head. I cannot think at the moment of particular terminology for such seafaring sort of things. But alas, I shall go ahead and continue. In relation to their aqueous affinity, they happen to bring things to the surface that lie underneath, dormant within the emotional space and depths of your being. Yes, so in that sort of regard, just as I was stating, but just worded a little bit differently. Now, in regards to like handling the emotional states, right? Not just bringing it up to the surface, but also being able to juggle it, right? So while And Nitziel is, once again, the more so younger, the more so playful sort, right? And Asariel is more so the older, the wiser sort, right? Juggling the emotions, the emotional state that one has, right? It happens to go ahead and be in line for those who are associated or are knowledgeable with the major arcana of the tarot, happens to be like the Temperance card in the tarot. And like the Temperance card in the tarot, Asariel helps you find inner calm through balancing out your emotions. Now, the thing about it is that I guess you can go ahead and say that if you're looking at the Temperance card itself, that's Asariel, right? Because, of course, obviously, there's always the sort of like, oh, what angel is this? What angel is that? When you look at iconography or mentions of different beings and different sort of text where a name isn't mentioned and all of that and what have you. But no, so I consider them pretty much like the embodiment of the Temperance card for myself. But yes, so I shall go ahead and continue. And if you hear all of this and you're like, you know what? Asariel seems pretty dope. Might want to go ahead and reach out, develop a relationship, go ahead and seek insight, all that sort of thing, right? Some magical intentions and aspects of rulership that, Asariel can be consulted or invoked for include, but they're not limited to, spiritual concepts, the ability to gain a completely objective perspective, all things which are illusionary, unclear, imaginary, or unstructured, such as dreams and psychic impressions, discerning non-physical phenomena, such as dreams, yet again, visions and psychic powers, discovering truths or rumors, contacting the dead, but with the caveat of using strict discernment to only do so for non-trivial and important matters, such as ancestor work, which in regards to consulting Asariel themselves, pretty much don't waste their time with that sort of shit in terms of, not just Asariel, but the dead themselves. Make sure that's for actually important sort of things, what have you. And, talking about the Jupiterian affinities at the beginning of this monologue, this talk, right? And that, they're mostly associated with Neptune, but because they're, very aligned with Pisces, that, the Jupiterian governance of that sign kind of goes ahead and seeps in, meshes in as well, right? The Jupiterian affinities that they are very good in being able to assist one in is opportunity, expansion, enlargement, and all of that sort of thing. And then works involving religion, faith, and law. And while it is not necessarily explicitly stated, I would go ahead and think in particular maritime law. And for those who are not necessarily aware of what maritime law is and how that sort of language goes and permeates throughout different manners of business and legal matters, I definitely think that is an interesting manner of study to go ahead and look up, whether it's just a general surface level manner or if that's, more so your cup of tea, more so a very deep dive into it, you can say. But yes, so that's just pretty much all in all, given a spotlight, some time in the sun for good old Archangel Asariel, who I consider as the Neptunian sage of temperance. So yes, shout out to Asariel, and also shout out to Nitziel in terms of them kind of being like a pair or a duo, you can say, and what have you. But yes, shout out to Archangel Asariel, and for those who happen to be listening to me and my monologue, what have you, if you find interest and or help in, calling on Asariel, then, thumbs up to you. And yes, I hope it goes well for you. But yes, this has been Twisted with the Open Sorcery, and stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.